Yo, 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 welcome back to Yu-Gi-Oh! Yeah, and today we're going to be doing the Last Warrior from Another Planet deck profile that I put together that I'll be bringing in the locals here soon. So we'll get into that and we'll let you see what I have. Alright, first off, we're going to start with the main stars, the fusion material for the Last Warrior from Another Planet, which is of course going to be 3 copies of Zombra the Dark, because you can't fusion summon him without this card, and Marikukai, however you really say his name. This guy actually has a kind of an interesting effect though, which is awesome, which when your opponent activates a magic card, I can actually offer this card as a tribute. Now there's stuff that you can actually do with this card when you play other cards to kind of take advantage of this in certain instances. So it is kind of a useful effect. It's not useless even in today's meta. That's actually, I mean, that's not bad depending on what kind of deck you have it in. Zombra the Dark, of course, you know, 4-star, 2100 beater, but, you know, his effect is he loses 200 attack. But, you know, mostly these are just for fusion material, just to get our last word from Another Planet. And our second card we're going to have is going to be 3 copies of Keeper of Dragon Magic. And you can read the effect here. You can discard a card out of polymerization from your deck to your hand, and you can reveal the fusion monster from your extra deck, special summon one of the fusion materials mentioned on the card from your graveyard in face down defense position, which is actually pretty good because you can resummon out Last Warrior from Another Planet if you need to, if you know one copy gets destroyed. So you can kind of go back in and out with fusion summoning him if you need to, if he ends up leaving the field. And then we also have 2 copies of Elemental Hero Prisma, which is once returned, you can reveal 1 fusion monster from your extra deck, then send 1 of the fusion materials whose name is specifically listed on that card from your deck to the graveyard. This card name then becomes the sent monster. So you can get the advantage of getting the monster in your graveyard, utilizing your graveyard, and also him becoming the fusion material that you need to actually get out the fusion monster you need. So I got to run about 2 copies of him in the deck. And I know some people might say I need to run 3 of these, but I only have 2. So 2 copies of King of Swamp, you know, substitute as a fusion material, and also as a good discard to get polymerization to your hand if you need it. And one good guy here, if you got him right off the bat, Cyberstein. So, you know, of course, 5,000 life points, immediately bring out a fusion monster of your choice. You know, sometimes it could pay off, especially when it comes to locking down your opponent's field from even summoning monsters. So it's a pretty good trade-off in my opinion. Of course, you can only run 1 copy of that because it's limited. And then they got some interesting monsters in here, just kind of like some stuff that kind of throw my opponent left field. You might kind of question this, like, whoa, why are you running this card? Why are you running Mimicking Man-Eater Bug? This isn't that bad. I run 1 copy of him. Reason being is, if I have Last Warrior on the field, I could still set monsters. I can't play him face up, but I could set them. So if there's a position where I can have him on the field early, he gets destroyed somehow by getting popped, and he attack and run into this dude, I can immediately destroy my opponent's attacking monster. This card cannot be destroyed by battle, which is awesome because then that can actually protect my life points to some degree, and I can absorb the attack of my opponent's monster that actually attacks this monster. Which normally, if he's going out of the field, my opponent's going to be bringing out big monsters and he attacks him, you know well that it's going to be a pretty big monster that runs into him. Then, you know, I could turn him into a pretty big beater utilizing my opponent's monsters. And Sangan as well, because I can get him out on the field, or if I play him face down defense position, he gets popped or something happens where my opponent destroys all my monsters, I can get, you know, maybe get Cyberstein from my deck or any other kind of fusion material that might be useful to getting Last Warrior back out on the field. And here's 2 other cards you might not expect in this deck. Red Eyes Black Dragon and Dark Magician, just 1 copy of each, because we're also running Dragoon in this deck, because Dragoon is going to be unaffected by his destruction effect of destroying all monsters on the field, because, you know, Dragoon's pretty much, well, he's immortal, so if he hits the field with Dragoon on the field, Dragoon is not going to leave the field. So I have 2 beaters on the field and 1 keeping my opponent from summoning monsters. So that's going to be our monsters for the deck, and now we're going to get into the spell cards. And our first thing we got here is going to be fusion deployment. So fusion deployment, reveal one fusion monster in your extra deck and special summon it. And from your hand or deck, one fusion material whose name is specifically listed on that card. So it's going to be specifically listed on the card. And also, I can't special summon monsters from the extra deck except fusion monsters, but it doesn't matter because the only thing you're going to be doing is special summoning monsters from the fusion deck. So really, it's a non-issue. And then we also have something similar to that card, Fusion Conscription. In Fusion Conscription, you can reveal one fusion monster in your extra deck and add one of the fusion materials whose name is specifically listed on that card from your deck or hand or graveyard to your hand. And if you do, the rest of this turn, after this card resolves, you cannot normal summon or set or special summon monsters with the added name monsters. So you could still summon monsters, it just can't be with that name, but it's irrelevant because the monster you're going to be getting is going to be your fusion material. So if you have polymerization, you just use polymerization, get that card on the field in the same turn, so you're not going to be using that same monster for a normal or special summon anyway, so it's kind of irrelevant. And of course, we're going to be playing 3 copies of polymerization because you can't get fusion monsters out very well unless you have poly. I like this version. I kind of got it. It's a little bit different, and a couple super rare polymerizations here as well. Of course, we all know what that does. And for our Dragoon, 2 copies of Red Eyes Fusion. I don't think we need to run 3 because it could end up bricking you at some point. I mean, imagine you having the copies in your hand, or if you already kind of use Red Eyes Fusion, you can't really use it again because you already got them out on the field. Not very good to have 3, just, you know, just to kind of minimize the bricking in the deck. We know what Red Eyes Fusion does, gets Dragoon out to the field, and I got some cards here that actually help with clearing the field. 2 copies of Lightning Storm. Reason being is even if I get them on the field, my opponent cannot summon monsters, but it does not destroy my opponent's monsters. It only destroys my monsters. But if I need to summon this and wipe out my opponent's board at the same time, and then they have nothing, then I can leave an open for me to do direct attacks while he's on the field. That's why I run 2 copies. One maybe, you know, for an instance of destroying my opponent's spells and traps and their monsters as well, because I'm going to play this before I even drop him on the field. And then I got a super poly. You might be asking, why am I running a super poly? Well, because I have some fusion monsters in here. Starting Venom Fusion Dragon, and some other Starting Venom Dragons too in here as well. Because I can utilize my dark monsters that I have in my deck, like Zombra the Dark, as well as the dark monsters my opponent has, to summon this card on the field. Because I can essentially do kind of a board wipe, because a lot of people are playing a lot of dark monsters these days, you know, and it's a pretty strong archetype that's commonly played. So I can, and this is like any, and the reason why is because I can use dark monsters specifically. So it doesn't matter the specific name. I can just use any dark monster in the field. And that's why Super Poly will be useful with this card in my deck to wipe my opponent's field if I need to. That's why I'm only running 1 copy, because I didn't want to brick. I just kind of have this in as like kind of like a last resort or something that I can use to kind of luck into possibly. And then we're running 1 copy of Reinforcements of the Army to get Zombra the Dark out, or some of our other warrior monsters that we could use in our deck to get Last Warrior from Another Planet out, and 1 Fusion Sage. Add 1 copy of Polymerization from my deck to my hand. Pretty useful. Now we're going to get into the traps. We're only playing 6 traps. The first 3 is 3 copies of Necrofusion. So if I've got my fusion material in my graveyard, activate Necrofusion. Get my get another copy of Last Word from Another Planet if I need to, if he gets destroyed. Or maybe if I have these guys in the graveyard and I use them as discard fodder, don't have Dragoon out, I could still use Necrofusion for this. Very useful card. And then we got our goat card here, Light of Intervention. With this, I could completely lock my opponent out by not allowing them to even set monsters in face-down defense position. So if I activate this with Last Warrior on the field, of course, they cannot summon, nor can they set monsters, which will kind of put my opponent in a tight spot. And their only solution would be some kind of monster that has some kind of negate that would make them not affected by these cards, which are lingering effects, not activated effects. And also, you know, it kind of puts them in a position where they have to rely on spells and traps in a meta to where a lot of spells and traps are used to simply get out their monsters, and not really a lot of stuff like lightning and storm and stuff is run as often as you might think. Well, I guess in regards to the decks that I've been playing against, not a lot of people running stuff like Raigeki and whatnot, or like, you know, Harpy's Feather Duster, which is limited at one copy per deck. And we're gonna get into the fusion monsters now. Of course, 3 copies of Last Warrior from Another Planet, the MVP of this deck, and we all know what he does. If this card is summoned, or if this card is special summoned, excuse me, destroy all monsters you control. Neither players can summon monsters. And I only have 2 copies of this right now, but I'm going to get a third. But I would ideally run 3 copies of Red Eyes Dark Dragoon. I got 2 copies of Red Eyes Dark Dragoon, and we all know what this guy does. Cannot be destroyed by card effects, so can't be destroyed by his effect. And neither player can target this card with card effects, so he can't be targeted with card effects directly. And in your main phase, I can destroy 1 monster my opponent controls. So I can pop my opponent's card. If you do, inflict damage to my opponent's equal to the attack of that monster to my opponent's life points, which is an awesome effect. So if I use Red Eyes Fusion with both of these, I could destroy up to 2 cards on the field with Red Eyes Dark Dragoon. So he can't be popped. I can use him to pop, leaving room for him to come in to attack to kind of clear the field at the same time. Awesome combo. These 2 guys on the field at the same time, you drop him, Dragoon, and you come out again later with Last Warrior. That's just probably not in-game, but, you know, it's not an easy thing to get around. Even though there's a lot of powerful decks that can outperform Dragoon decks and, you know, the Last Warrior from Another Planet, the deck that I have here, it's still fun, and it can really kind of annoy people, possibly. And I got 1 copy of Predator Plant right here, and this is the one that takes 3 dark monsters on the field. And it's on the field, too, so you gotta pay attention to that. But Super Poly comes into play for this. Is when your opponent special summons a monster from the extra deck while you control this fusion summon card quick effect, you can negate the summon. So I can negate a summon if he's on the field if I use him with Super Poly, and if you do, destroy that monster. So that is a useful effect to have if I use Super Poly. And then we also have Starving Venom Predator Power Fusion Dragon here as well, and it's 1 dark monster, 1 fusion monster. So I can use my opponent's fusion monster with Super Poly and 1 dark monster, and I can also do this with, let's say if I have one of my other fusion monsters on the field, I can use Polymerization and a dark monster, which I'm already running in my deck. And this quick effect is I contribute 1 monster on either field with a Predator counter, which is irrelevant, can't really use that. And you can target 1 dark monster in graveyard and special summon. You can use this effect of Starting Vending Predator Power Fusion Dragon once per turn, which will be useful as well. And we also going to be running Starving Venom Fusion Dragon, 3 copies of this. And this card is running my deck. These 2 were mostly fillers. These 2 guys are actually useful. 3 guys are actually useful. Being as if he's destroyed, I can destroy all monsters on the field. So if I use like Super Poly to summon this, and he's on the field, and I drop, let's say, Last Warrior from Another Planet, of course, while he's already on the field, and let's say I use Super Poly, got him on the field, then he drops, he destroys him, and then when this goes out and leaves the field, it destroys all monsters on my opponent's side of the field. So basically, does a board wipe not only on my side of the field in combo with this, but my opponent's side as well, which leaves their life points directly open for me to attack. And we're going to also be running 2 copies of Baguska, mostly filler. won't ever be using this much, but I do have some 4-star monsters that can be utilized with getting him on the field if I need to. And then a couple copies of Dark Charmer. So this would be useful as well. You know, I could get my opponent's Dark Monster from their graveyard and use it as fusion material to maybe get out Starving Venom Dragon. That's another possibility too. I have never come and run in an instance where testing this deck where I need to probably do that, because it's pretty consistent getting Blast Warrior from another planet on the field anyway, so it's not that big of a deal. So we're going to be getting into a test hand here. Alright, now we're here to do the test hands. I'll do a couple test hands here for you, give you some examples on how we would run this deck and how we'd get Last Warrior out on the field. So we'll start off with 5 cards. We're already starting out good here. Look at this. So we got 2 copies of Marikukai. We got a copy of Reinforcements, Polymerization. So what we can do is, what I probably do is just play Reinforcements of the Army, would be the first card that I would probably play. To add 1 level 4 or lower warrior monster from my deck to your hand. So what we're going to do is, we're going to go in, search for a warrior monster. We already kind of have the copies we need to get in the Last Warrior, so we could actually, if we wanted to, let's see what we got here. I would probably go in and get a copy, since I don't have one, Elemental Hero Prisma, just to have them in our hand. I haven't played this deck that much at all, or even did a lot of test hands with it, so since I already got a lot of the pieces I need anyways, I'm going to have one backup piece to the puzzle here, which would help me. So what we can do, I can summon him, reveal 1 fusion monster with the name that's specifically listed on the card as well. And actually what I would do is I would go ahead and reveal Zombra the Dark and go ahead and go through my deck, mainly just to thin it out as well, which is also a good idea, to get Zombra the Dark from my deck to my graveyard, even though I have one already in my hand. But because I do this, his name becomes Zombra the Dark. And because of this, I can actually play Polymerization, Fuse Prisma, and Marikukai's in my hand, so I have 2 backup copies in my hand. And I get Last Warrior out to the field already. Look at this. First turn, Last Warrior from another planet. Very easy and simple. Let's say it goes to his turn, comes back to mine. Let's say he pops it somehow. Let's draw a card and let's see what we can do. Oh, look at this. We just drew King of the Swamp. Discard King of the Swamp. We could get Polymerization. Play Polymerization. And guess what we get to go into again? Another copy of Last Warrior from another planet. Now let's say I go to my turn, let's see what we get. Oh, we get another King of Swamp. Okay. This could actually be useful. Let's say we go into another turn. We get Fusion Conscription. You could play Fusion Conscription. Fusion Conscription is, I can reveal 1 fusion monster from an extra deck and add 1 fusion material whose name is specifically listed on a card from a deck to the graveyard to your hand. So let's say I revealed Red Eyes Dark Dragoon. I could say Red Eyes Dark Dragoon. You could do this with Last Warrior if you wanted. Let's say I want to get Dark Magician to my hand. You could have Dark Magician and this ready to go in your hand if you wanted to, from Fusion Conscription. So you'd have a copy of King of the Swamp and Dark Magician. He could be, if I draw in a Polymerization, he could be as a substitute for Dark Magician to get Dragoon out. And we'll go in here. Oh, look at this. Let's say he popped him again. Let's say he got destroyed again. We can go into another card, which would be reveal 1 fusion monster from your extra deck and special summon from your hand or deck 1 of the fusion materials whose name is specifically listed on the card. So we can reveal Dragoon again, which is already in our extra deck right here. So you just reveal Dragoon, activate Fusion Deployment, immediately get out Red Eyes Black Dragon from the deck to the field, discard again King of Swamp, get another copy of Polymerization. We've already thinned out the deck quite a bit doing that too as well, which is kind of crazy. To go onto a copy of Red Eyes Dark Dragoon really easily. No problems at all. And look, we can draw on to get a Polymerization from our deck to our hand. If we need to, Light of Intervention, which is another option if we had Last Warrior on the field to lock down my opponent. We'll do another Dest Hand here and see what we can do again. See how good of a combo we can get doing second time in a row. Alright, we're getting to our second test hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. Look at this. Set Light of Intervention face down on the field. Activate Fusion Deployment. Get a fusion material, revealing Last Warrior to my opponent. To get Zombra the Dark. Yeah, and let's say this is first turn too. So we're going first in this situation. And now we have him on the field. Oh, look, Polymerization. Fusion him, Marikukai, from my hand. Get Last Warrior from another planet to the field. My opponent goes into their standby phase. I activate Light of Intervention. And now they have no monsters on the field. They can't summon, nor can they set. We'll go on to my turn again. We drew into a copy of Keeper of Dragon Magic, so we get a Polymerization or Fusion spell from our deck to our hand. I really don't want to discard Red Eyes from this if I do get him on the field. I can't play him anyways because of Last Warrior from another planet. Let's say turn switch. Let's say in his turn he destroys him. And we'll go into another draw. Okay. And this is what I'll actually do. You might be surprised. I'll play Keeper of Dragon Magic. Discard Polymerization. And after I discard Polymerization, I can actually get a copy of Red Eyes Fusion from my deck to the hand. And then play Red Eyes Fusion, summon Dragoon, discarding Red Eyes Black Dragon and Dark Magician from our deck to the graveyard. Go into a copy of Dark Dragoon to the field. As you can see, there's a lot of possibilities of this deck, a lot of damage you can do, and a lot of different combos you can pull off. So pretty much this is kind of some example test hands, but here's another example here. Let's say somehow I only have a copy. Let's say I only have, like, say, Keeper of Dragon Magic on the field. He's a dark monster. I don't really have much that I can do. Let's say I'm kind of bricked a little bit, but I drew into my copy of Super Polymerization. And let's say I have Super Polymerization face down in the field. Let's say it goes in my opponent's turn. My opponent summons 2 dark monsters. I can activate Super Poly, tribute all 3 cards, or maybe 1 dark monster. I can tribute his dark monster, my Keeper of Dragon Magic, using Super Poly during his turn to get out, of course, Starving Venom Fusion Dragon to the field. And let's say somehow I get the cards to get Last Warrior from another planet. Last Warrior from another planet hits the field, he gets destroyed, his effect pops off, and any other card monsters my opponent has on the field get destroyed immediately. So I could actually wait to get him on the field with Super Poly until my opponent has built a board, then tribute one of his dark monsters, and then have him get sent to the field during his end phase So when it goes into my turn, I can drop Last Warrior from another planet and wipe my opponent's board clear as he gets wiped from the field and go in for a direct attack. But this is pretty much the deck profile that I kind of came up with. I kind of looked up online some other ideas to kind of come up with my own version of a Last Warrior from Another Planet deck profile. But thanks for coming and watching this, and I'll be doing more deck profiles, a lot more unboxings, and comment, like, and subscribe. Yu-Gi-Oh! Yeah!